Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of Sit with Stitt. If you've been following along with the series, you know that this is a new series where I will take on a taboo, controversial, or otherwise important topic and contend with it for the internet. There are a lot of really great things going on in my personal journey this week, so I'm a little scatterbrained if I say the same thing over. I'm not going to re-record the whole video just because of a slip of the tongue, as they say. But I want to just kind of set the stage by saying that I'm very grateful for and receptive to the many people who have been pouring into my life and building me up, and I'm very impressed by the number of different methodologies that these people use. For me, any kind of self-work has to do with how you engage your own psyche, how you bring things up from the unconscious where they might be suppressed or avoided. Our rational brains don't like to look at difficult topics. So these approaches to mental health work allow you to kind of go through a back door and look at things that are kind of difficult emotionally for you to handle in a safe way. So I'm working with an emotion code reader, a certified aromatherapist, a life coach, a licensed therapist who does EMDR, just a whole bunch of things. And my point with that is every time I position myself as the moral superior or the intellectual superior or said that, oh, that approach wouldn't be good for me, I'm glad that's out there for other people, but I don't really need that. It's kind of fake, or it's kind of, I've already done that work. Well, it's kind of a tough pill to swallow sometimes, but humility is always the answer, so I always engage what my focus is brought to. And any time that I have just kind of swallowed down my own ego and done the thing anyway, I've wound up being very impacted by it. Before I go on talking about this week's topic of Reiki, I want to get around this sort of religious cultural aspect of this approach where people genuinely believe that you lay down a Reiki table, you're inviting demons into your life or something like that. Listen. The laying on of hands has been used as a healing methodology in various cultures around the world for a long time, and many of those cultures say that it's a very effective approach. So I'm never arguing for anyone to do any of these things. Personally, I'm open-minded to a lot of things. If it allows me to interface with symbols or interface with my own unconscious, I'm going there. So tarot, Reiki, emotion code, hypnosis, any of it. I'm here to experience it. I trust my filter of truth. I'm not afraid to ask questions. And what I knew about Reiki before my first session was essentially that I know and believe that emotions are stored in the body. And Reiki has to do with the study and the manipulation of energy within the body by trained practitioners to kind of notice, draw attention to, kind of sore areas, maybe areas where you have emotions stored. And as a person, what it looks like is you're laying on a table and someone is either running their hands over your body, over your energy centers, or maybe they're putting their hand on your head or on your chakras or whatever, depending on what language you want to use. And they're just noticing. They're helping you notice. They're helping you gain awareness of where the blockages are, where things just kind of don't feel right. And the only other thing I knew about Reiki prior to my first session was that sometimes I help people in that way. If they're if they're in a bad way mentally, maybe 6 times since I opened my practice, I've offered a kind of an energy healing session. And then that's also something I do with my wife at home sometimes. I'll kind of massage her temples or scalp or shoulders to help her get rid of a headache or fall asleep or even process grief, things like that. So you could argue that it's just physiological, or you could argue that there's more to it. To me, it doesn't really matter because it works. So when it works, it works. I've come to believe that there is more to it, and I'll share why that is. The first time I ever did Reiki, I was using a lot of discipline and energy, and in fact, I was doing work to let my guard down to be observed. Katie will tell you the same thing. I was very tense, and I was looking for an answer. This is something I've never done before, and I'm like, what am I going to learn for this? And so I'm trying to relax, but I'm focusing to try to be relaxed. It's hard to relax when you're focusing very much on being relaxed. So I did learn in the first session what I believe psychologically about Reiki, which is that you're basically taking a very intuitive or empathetic practitioner and you're observing a client for many minutes. And as this client is sitting there relaxing, maybe some more effectively than others, they're gonna react. They're gonna react to the thoughts that move through their mind. So they might have a thought or an image that makes them breathe in or twitch a little bit or just kind of express some discomfort. They might have that happen subconsciously. Maybe they know where the hand is, like there's a change in shadow and light when the hand moves over my eyes, and maybe they can feel when the hand moves over their gut, even though they're relaxed. And so practitioners of Reiki would probably say, oh yeah, there's something off either in this chakra, in your root chakra, or in your gut. There's something stored there. Do you know what that might be? What were you feeling when you had this reaction? And it gives you an opportunity to kind of extrapolate what you were experiencing during the session. And since they're an empathetic person, they can say, oh, could that be related to this or that? A lot of times there's a brief segment of conversation before or after the Reiki where they can kind of just get a glimpse of where you're at psychologically, and then you go into a relaxed state and they observe you, and then you can have a conversation around it and bring up stuff from the unconscious to then work through and process. That's pretty much what I learned from the first one. I was so uptight because as public as I am about sharing the truths that I learned in my journey, I just kind of see that as a basic human duty, to be honest, to seek truth, to share truth that has been effective for you in your path. When it comes down to just me, Dustin, as a person, I'm really quite private. I always wear pants. I don't usually wear shorts. And usually, my baseline condition around people is something like this. I'm introverted, even though people wouldn't think it. So it was a lot of work for me to be seen for 30 or 45 minutes. Still, I thought that it was good for me to learn psychologically what I believe is happening during Reiki. The second time, I've been open about my kind of religious experiences and journey in some of the previous videos, so you can watch the second video. It's called Heresy, where I talk about a little bit about my faith, and you could just go back and watch the previous videos and you'll see why this might have impacted me, and I mentioned it briefly. People believe that you can let negative energy into your space by going through a Reiki session. What happened to me in my second experience was that the exact opposite happened. So I'd been continuing my self-work in a holistic way, and I was really a different person than the first time, and it was easier for me to be receptive and to go into a more relaxed mindset, but still I had some level of guard up. I was open and receptive to it, but it still was a little bit uncomfortable. Caden led me through this meditation to get me into a more relaxed state, and the meditation was, imagine you're walking by some running water, something like that. It's not an exact quote, obviously. If anyone wants to come walk with you, you're more than welcome to invite them to. And so this person shows up. I can't see them because I'm not a very visual thinker, but I felt them show up, and they were wearing kind of the ancient robes of a philosopher, and we're having this relaxing walk along a creek or a riverside. And I asked who it was. I posed this question to my own consciousness, to my own psyche. Who is this that's guiding me on this journey? And the answer was Aramaeus. I never heard that word in my life. I was like, oh, is that something from the Bible? I've been kind of, going back to church and stuff like that. Is this from the Bible? After the Reiki session, I looked it up, and Aramaeus is a way to describe Aramaic, the language that Jesus spoke. And so I'm in this relaxed state. I never heard the word Aramaic or Aramaeus. Who is guiding me? Basically, the Word of God was guiding me. So I'm having this very relaxing ministerial experience of walking next to running water with this kind of sage wearing these ancient robes, who I just knew. He knew me, and he was teaching me, and he was ministering to me, and he was healing me. And I felt this energetically in my body. And then afterward, I go look it up, and it's literally the word of Christ. It's Christ's language that was walking next to me. So that was really impactful. I continue to be amazed by what comes up from the unconscious when you're receptive to it. finally, the third Reiki session. This one was actually last week, and like I said, I've been really deep into my self-work lately. I have learned to surrender. Typically in my work, I wake up and start every day by saying, all right, you will never break me. Whatever I need to face today, I will face it. And it's this very warrior's ethos, you know. I'm a veteran, so that community influenced me a lot, and I hate to see suffering. It is a spiritual gift of mine that I see suffering in the world, and I have made it my mission to help combat that suffering. And so a lot of that has felt like spiritual warfare to me. I'm putting me in the warfare. That doesn't need to be like that, you know? I can allow God to do God's work, whatever God means to you. I'm not putting my beliefs on anyone, but in my own life, I feel I could just surrender and be the steward that I'm meant to be, and I don't have to fight so hard to do this work. I could just allow myself to be who I am and do this work. That was the mentality that I was going into my third Reiki session with. And so Cadence starts me on the same thing. Imagine you're moving towards some water, and you know, she starts guiding me through this meditation. My mind takes me to this ancient bathhouse. There's a stone bathhouse, and there's this running water that's moving into this bath, and it's steaming, and it's like the perfect temperature, you know, like when you're taking a shower and you want it to be as hot as possible without hurting, and you get it right, and it's just that perfect temperature. That's the temperature the bath was. And I ended up being bathed and ministered to by a woman. And you know, there was no like weird intent behind it or anything. It was I was exhausted from fighting for what feels like my entire life. I have been locked in this state of fight or flight, and along with the emotion code reading that I've been doing and the therapy that I've been doing and those sorts of things, I had arrived at this place of surrender, and I was being ministered to, and kind of felt like a baptism almost. The old me, all the grime was just being washed away, and I felt so relaxed, and I felt like I was being prepared to walk into a higher state of spiritual being. And I asked who it was that gave me the bath, and the answer came back, Mary Magdalene. Well, a lot of traditions, that Mary was kind of a close companion who ministered to Christ. And so there's also an argument that I talked about the anima and animos in the relationship video, which was last week's. You can look up Sit with Stitt 3. In Jungian psychology, there's inner conception of masculine and feminine. And so arguably what was happening during this Reiki session was I was laying down my sort of warrior identity and allowing myself to be ministered to by this kind of inner anima, this inner feminine. And ever since then, I have felt like I'm no longer locked in this state of fight or flight, this survival state. I could just sit and I could just relax. And I will say this about any approach to mental health, including mentorship: there's never a shortcut. You have to do your work. You have to listen to the inner voice and take the steps, take the action steps that you need to take in order to become the best, strongest version of yourself. If I had not been doing this holistic approach to my own development, I don't believe I would have gotten as much out of the Reiki. But since I did, all of those approaches in combination have helped to relax my nervous system to where I don't feel like my work is a personal spiritual battle anymore. Instead, I'm just a steward for the truth that I've gained in my study. And I can't really explain how much that Reiki session meant to me, that for what felt like the first time in years, I was able to just really kind of let my guard down and relax and sink into it. A few things were different about that because of the work I had done. Instead of, you know, typically in my Reiki sessions, I'd have my ankles crossed, and maybe I'd do like this, I'd have my hands crossed across my stomach. This time I had a sheet over me, and my arms were just out, and my ankles weren't crossed, and I really was open. And so because of being that open, my unconscious was able to bring up some more comforting kind of symbols and imagery. It's interesting that after that Reiki session, I went home, and that evening I had this physiological purge of toxins. I was vomiting. There wasn't a lot of dignity in what was happening, but a lot of toxicity was expelled from my system. And I think it did have a lot to do with, you know, all of the various approaches to mental health that I've been doing, because I very much believe that emotion is stored in the body, and that as you see to your inner work, it affects your physiological health. So overall, I think Reiki is worthwhile for anyone, even if you only approach it on the basis that I have to go be seen. That's difficult. It gets easier as you practice, and I'm trusting my intuitive, empathetic guide to notice things and have conversation around them. I've come to believe that there's a little more to it, and that there are frequencies, vibrations, energies in our interactions with one another. There's a whole lot of scriptures from various cultures that would back that up, where two or more are gathered, or about the laying on of hands. And so Reiki, for me, I kind of look forward to the next one, and I don't approach it with high expectation. I believe that the preparatory work you do will affect the experience that you have. But after that kind of purge of toxins, something happened that I will end with, that I'll close with for this week, and that will be next week's topic. I didn't feel the need to lean on some crutches that I'd been using in my life. So for a long time, I've been using THC to help me sleep and wind down and process thoughts and remain creative in the evenings. And after that Reiki session, which followed a bunch of other methodologies, I just gave the THC away. And I will do a video on THC next week, what I think the dangers are, the utilities. Can it still be used as a medicine, even though modern strains are way more potent than anything that was getting smoked out of a peace pipe in the 60s and 70s? We'll talk about it next week. But in the meantime, hey, schedule a Reiki session with Caden. You never know what part of your own psyche you might meet. You never know what kind of experience you have. But for myself, I learned to be seen. I met with Aramaic, which is the language of Christ. I was ministered to in an ancient bathhouse by my anima. I learned to set down my commitment to being a warrior and to being ready at all times, and I learned to just kind of fall into surrender and to relax my nervous system. And this has been a methodology that's really helped me on my journey, so I hope it helps you too. If you ever have any questions about your experiences, talk to me or talk to someone who's actually qualified in it. I can point you in some directions, and I'll look forward to another talk next week. Thanks so much.